What's up, goons? Welcome to another edition of Sports Hop, a show that looks at two independent entities in music and sports and examines how they've influenced each other over the years in a number of different ways. I'm your host, William McLaughlin, aka The Kid, and as always, let's get this bad boy rolling.
Shut up and sit down.
Alright, for those of you that have already heard a number of my episodes, or at least a few episodes, and if you're one of my faithful listeners who's listened to every episode, shout out to you. But again, this show and this series, what it does is basically examine how music and sports, although two great giant entities all their own, when they coexist and work together, can have a great influence on society and culture as a whole. Now, I've already dove into a couple of different topics, like how the Super Bowl halftime show has become one of the biggest musical spectacles of the year, how esports and music are really starting to bring in and usher in this new era in digital technology, and how esports is becoming one of the more relevant and more well-known organized sports today, and although some people will argue that it isn't a sport. But with it being the week of WrestleMania, I decided to bring in a guest by the name of Matthew Sharp, aka Matty Ice. He is the host of the High Risk Podcast, show that dives in and talks about wrestling and current topics in the WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling circuit, and anything that is of the amateur setup. The show is on hiatus at the moment, so I thought I'd bring him in to invade Sports Hop. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm a big fan, and it's been a while since I've been on the mic, so this is awesome. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, now, as we said, it is WrestleMania week, so this week's episode is going to talk about the influence of the WWE and really just pro wrestling on music. I mean, for those of you that are fans of wrestling, one, you're awesome. If you're not, you're entitled to certain wrong opinions, but it's all right. We're not here to judge. But the WWE itself, again, entertainment sports at its finest. When you watch it, you see just the spectacle, the work that's put in by these athletes to put on a great show for the fans. How would you describe the WWE, Matt?
Oh man, I mean, I think the best way to describe it is it's theater, it's ballet, it's dance, it's a concert, it's just this giant spectacle. And, I've been a fan since I was a kid, and I think what draws me in is just the storytelling and then the music as well, because, just the other day I was riding around listening to different theme music and everything, so I like how it goes from being something you watch on TV to something that you can bring into your everyday life as well.
See, and that's where you're pulling right into the topic of this week's episode. Basically, what I'm going to discuss and what we're going to discuss is how, when you look at music itself, there are some songs, there are some walkout music and entrances that athletes have for the WWE that these songs were specifically made for that. And on top of that, even if these are songs that are pulled in for the athletes, those of you that are fans or at least know the sport, there are times when you hear a song that it connects you immediately back to that one wrestler. And when we talk about this, basically what we're going to look at is I'm going to talk about what I think are the top 5 most influential walkout songs in the WWE, and we'll also discuss our favorites as well. But this should be a good one simply because it is WrestleMania week, WrestleMania 34 coming up. I know I'm excited. Matty Ice over here, he can barely contain himself, so it's going to be a fun one, but we're going to get right into it. Off the top of your head, before we dive into a top 5, what would you say is your favorite, or at least what's the one entrance song that sticks out, or who's that one athlete that just has that one kick-ass song?
I have to say Triple H, and I felt that way since I was a kid. As soon as you hear that guitar kick in and then time to play the game, it takes me away and it makes me think of the King of Kings of Wrestling. That's Triple H, the cerebral assassin. So for me, that's the one that I think I could just rock out to when I'm in the gym, when I'm in the car. It doesn't matter. That's my go-to.
Now, when we look at music as a whole, and I've discussed this in the show a number of times, there's so many ways where it can really just make or break certain events. But when you look at music in the influential part on the WWE, how do you feel it plays a role in pro wrestling today?
I mean, the entrance of a wrestler is arguably the most important piece other than the wrestling. That's what's going to set the tone for the night. That's what gives the audience an idea of the character that they are out there going to be. So to me, I mean, you can't. It plays a big role. The music has to speak to who the character is that they are. And so I think that, it's the key ingredient for the character development and where the character goes. And there's times when you'll see whether if somebody starts out as a face and then goes to a heel, sometimes they'll darken the music up just a little bit just to give it more the feel, I think, of Randy Orton when he switched from the Legend Killer, and Burnin' My Light was his song, and it's really upbeat and everything. And then he switches to the Viper, and now it's this Voices song, and it's kind of just twisted, demented, and everything. So I think it's a big part in just the character themselves.
Now, when we're looking at this and we discuss, obviously, like what we feel are our top 5 greatest songs, when you've looked at the evolution of the WWE, and for those of you that are true fans, from when it was the WWF to now the WWE, and you look at the expansion of 205 Live, you have Mixed Match Wrestling now on Facebook Live, which is another impact on the social atmosphere for fans and culture in general when it comes to professional sports in this. But how do you feel the WWE has been able to change or influence music, not only on fans, but the brand of the music industry itself?
Right. I think if you look at the theme music today, they're breaking away from the actual like bands doing the music and everything. It's a lot of just the guitars and the drums and everything. And I think now with the top 40 radio hits, it's kind of taking that sort of a vibe to it. And then I have to think of Ric Flair. If you're on his Instagram, my man has been in like rap music videos and award ceremonies.
Killing the game.
Yeah. So, I just think just the effect that and that's maybe not so much the music side of it, but just to know that like a character that he's lived out, like I always say with Ric Flair, it's never been a gimmick, it's been a lifestyle for him. And so like that has influenced music going forward with rap and rock and everything. So, it's just crazy how much this inspires a whole different world outside of it. So
see, and that's a good point. Like you said, it inspires a whole nother world. And when you look at it from that range of somebody who is, you may not be a big fan of wrestling, you may not even know the sport all that well, but you may connect to certain wrestlers or you may connect to these athletes simply because of the music itself. I know when I was listening to music growing up, like Motorhead for me for the longest time was a classic heavy metal band. It was a great metal band that arguably will stand the test of time on their merit of music alone. They are going to go down as one of the greatest rock groups to ever do what they did. Yeah. But as I got older and got more into the WWE, and as I was growing up, I started to connect Motorhead back to Triple H more and more. And now today, even if I'm listening to just Ace of Spades or anything of Motorhead's greatest hits, I immediately connect back to the game as well because it was Triple H's song. And the music itself is great. But now I don't just look at Motorhead as like, oh, one of the greatest rock bands ever, but I also look at them as just like, these guys made one of the coolest and if not one of the most badass walkout songs in the world when it came to Triple H. So yeah, you see that. And going back to your point about how you're going away from the top 40 hits and how they're bringing in more of this, they create the music themselves. There's a great article on WWE.com that looks inside the music of the WWE, and Mike Lowry and John Ali Castro, they are part of CFO music that really does a lot of what the WWE is looking for in entrance music. For those of you that are fans, Finn Balor, Bobby Roode, there are a number of different athletes that they really correspond with and make that music. But it's insane to think how two guys working in the studio doing this, these aren't even true songs. These aren't true like albums. They're not part of anything like on a grand scheme setup. But you look at it and they're creating a lot of those songs for those athletes, which is really cool because you don't really look at music and you think, oh, it's just they're not doing it for an album or anything. These are just solely dedicated to an athlete walking out for 30 seconds to a minute, if that. And that's the cool thing about it, is like you really see how music itself plays that role when it comes to just, walkout music and its influence on the WWE. All right, now we've rambled enough, as I seem to always do in this show, but that's the beauty of running it. You can kind of just talk about whatever, and if it doesn't make sense, oh well, people will get the point, hopefully. Now, going into the segment of top 5 greatest songs when it comes to walkout music, you've probably had some time to think about this, across all eras. If you had to name your top 5, if you're struggling with that, you can go top 3, but what songs do you immediately think of all the time that stand the test of time of walkout music in the WWE?
Triple H for me is number 1, as I said before.
Debatable.
Okay. Like you said before, you're entitled to your wrong opinion, and that's fine. So I would say Triple H, Shawn Michaels, "Sexy Boy." When I love that song. I can't get enough of it. And then I would say The Rock's. I'm a big rock fan, so he's got to be in there. And then I would have to go with Bobby Roode, and my final one would have to be Stone Cold's "Breaking Glass."
Yeah, Stone Cold.
Yeah.
All right. So you would rank Stone Cold as 5th behind Bobby Roode, though.
We could probably do a whole nother show on why that's probably not the right order.
Yeah, shame. Okay, now, for those of you listening, and if you're on YouTube or SoundCloud, I'm going to go ahead and play those songs in that order that he called it for you, just so even if you don't know them or if you don't remember them, I'll play those really quick for you goons to enjoy. So go ahead and sit back and relax and listen to Matthew Sharp, a.k.a. Matty Ice's top 5. It's still debatable, but here are his top 5 songs.
Time to play the game!
I think I'm cute. I know I'm sexy. I've got the looks. If you smell what The Rock is cooking. Glorious. No, I won't give in. I won't give in till I'm victorious. And I will defend. I will defend.
All right, now that you've heard his top 5, those are some solid ones. I like Stone Cold Steve Austin just because, the guy was just... He made drinking beer cool, and not a lot of people are into they're like, you shouldn't have the influence of booze or anything on younger kids, but I mean, I'm not saying at the age of 12 when I was watching him, throw down a couple Miller Lights, I wasn't sitting there thinking like, man, that'd be really cool. But at the age of 24, I'm sitting there like, man, that was really cool.
Well, we would go out to our trampoline and wrestle around, and I mean, we would take our cans of Pepsi and just do a little Pepsi bath right there. And so I mean, yeah, I think it's an iconic thing, and I think he made wrestling relevant for pop culture at that time. So
now, when you look at your top 5 out of all of those, why do you think every one of those? You've already kind of touched on it with Stone Cold, but how do you feel each one of those has had an influence on not only the WWE, obviously, because it's part of what their culture is, but how do you feel that influences, the culture side of it with fans and in society with music in general?
I think it just goes back to setting the tone, and I think a big thing with the walkout themes is you are letting people know right out the gate who you are and what you stand for. And so I think that's a big thing with music is it's a way for us to channel who we are and get that out there for the world to see. So I think by them using the music to really dive into what is this person feeling at this time before they go out to this match, and really it's up to the wrestlers too. If the game hits and Triple H walks out and he's nonchalantly just walking to the ring, it's not a big deal. But if he's spitting the water and flexing and stuff, then that kind of changes the tone a little bit. So I think the impact it has is just really honing in on the human side to everybody, and also the larger-than-life character within each of us that we want to be. And so I think that's where the music for wrestling can kind of inspire music outside of that.
See, and this is why I had you in as a guest. Again, folks, Matthew Sharp, a.k.a. Matty Ice. He runs the High Risk Podcast. It's on hiatus at the moment, but he, again, dives into everything WWE, professional wrestling, New Japan Pro Circuit. You were a videographer for NWL, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so, this is a man who knows his stuff when it comes to wrestling. A big goon when it comes to music as well. So when you look at it, as we were talking, like how Ric Flair, guys like that, they have that influence of just that larger-than-life character or just outside of sports itself. Going forward, what do you feel is the biggest thing that the WWE has done well with music? Because if you look at it, almost every pay-per-view event they have is sponsored, obviously by like other products, other corporate entities and stuff, but there's usually an album associated with each pay-per-view event. I know MGK did, I believe it was WrestleMania 33 or 32. So. Yeah, he was, so his entire album, and the man himself like has been a part of a lot of other different cultural phenomenons in music and movies. But how do you feel the WWE is going forward with the area of holding music down with its product of professional wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing for me, they're good about showing you music that you may not have known about. So like what you said with artists coming in and everything, Kid Rock is being thrown into the celebrity wing of the WWE Hall of Fame this year. And so they'll bring in Kid Rock and have him. I was watching WrestleMania 25 the other day, and Kid Rock did a little show right there, kind of like the halftime thing. And Limp Bizkit's been a big part of them. And they're good about using a song from a new record that somebody's put out and kind of promoting the show that way. So I think they've got that down pretty well as far as picking music that represents kind of the tone for the pay-per-view or whatever it is that they're going to do, but also kind of pushing new artists and artists that have been around for a while. But I think what they're doing right now, I think, is kind of breaking away from an actual band coming in and cutting the track form or whatever. I think it's great that we've got a team of a few guys that can sit down and come up with a song that you could just rock out to any other time. It doesn't have to be for wrestling or whatever. So I mean, I love what they're doing. They're kind of going for more just the melodies and everything and not so much the lyrics and all that. So, but when you catch somebody that has a lyric to their song now, it makes them stand out more in your mind, because it's like, oh, okay, everybody else is walking out to
instrumentals.
Yeah, but now here comes Bobby Roode, glorious. Like, so, yeah, I can't. Oh man, I don't know. I just feel like they're doing everything right with it right now, I think.
Yeah, and like you said, it's very unique in that sense of like we talked about with the CFOs in Lowry and Ale Castro. Again, a couple of guys that are in the studio putting together these beats and these melodies. And like you said, it's something you can pull out of just their entrance song, and you can listen to it at any other time. And like I've said with this show a number of times, is that music has that beauty of evoking different emotions, different memories, and it brings out something, and kind of like you said, and something I never really thought of until you mentioned, is that larger-than-life personality, or something that you may not necessarily be, but you always wanted to be outside of your daily life. And that's the great thing about music. And that's the great thing I feel about the WWE. And a lot of people always argue that the debate of like, well, it's not truly fake, it's entertainment sport, or real, it's fake, it's entertainment sports, which that kind of blows my mind from a sports perspective, because we've seen in other sports that where they will try to coerce or move something in their favor so that an athlete is out there. So for example, earlier this season in the NFL with Ezekiel Elliott and all the the domestic violence charges he had and stuff, he was being subpoenaed by a federal court. He was being investigated federally, and they were supposed to suspend him for a number of games at the beginning of the season. And the NFL went out of their way to make sure that he was starting the season so that they would drive up their attendance, their money, and everything. So at that point, if you're telling me that wrestling is fake and you're saying that it's just entertainment and it's not real sports, how is that no different from what the NFL does with trying to get Ezekiel Elliott on the field to influence their money gains and to influence, the property that they can sell or anything that they sell? So, I mean, if that's what blows my mind sometimes is that cultural debate of like entertainment sports versus real sports. All sports are entertainment.
Right.
So, and that's just me rambling again, but going back to it, like you said, the larger-than-life characters, the music itself has an influence in the game itself of wrestling and outside of it with people's daily lives. Obviously, you and I, good friends, when we listen to music, there are a number of times where we'll bring up something from wrestling that goes with it, so it's really cool. Now, going back to the top 5 setup where we were discussing. You had your top 5. Go ahead and name them off again. What was it?
Let me see. Triple H is The Game. Shawn Michaels, Sexy Boy. I believe these are probably going to be out of order. So The Rock, and then Bobby Roode, and then Stone Cold.
Yeah, so those were his top 5, and there's some good ones. Those are some really good ones.
Well, and now I'm thinking of like all the other ones I could have mentioned.
Okay,
so it's always tough to
you know,
do
better
this.
yet, you know, because we got time, and this show is just more about the rambling itself,
Okay.
and just if you had I got a feeling you have a second set of top 5.
I could probably squeeze one out really quick.
Okay, what are your other honorable mentions, or what would you potentially throw in there to debate?
Okay. Just because I woke up this morning, said my prayers, and ate my vitamins, Hulk Hogan's "I'm a Real American," that just gets me going.
I am a real American.
I love
yeah,
that.
it's a good one.
I love that.
Okay.
Drew McIntyre had a song the first time with his first run with the WWE, if I can get it out, and
Today, Junior.
yeah, and it's just really kind of dark and out of time, so say goodbye, all that good stuff. Finn Balor's "Take a Breath," I love that, or "Catching My Breath," whatever the heck it is. And then I'm gonna go with Bret Hart's just that guitar to start out. Oh my gosh, that gets me every time. And then Kane's "Slow Chemical" by 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a grunge classic right there, man.
I love that song. I can't get enough of it.
Okay, so those are your second top 5. I'm not even gonna go out of my way to play those just because you already said your first 5 and those ones were good.
That's fine. This is your show.
Yeah, and well, the funny thing is one of the ones you mentioned is actually in my top 5 as well. So,
okay.
But my top 5, going from 5th to 1st. My 5th is Finn Balor's "Catching My Breath," just because like when you walk out and everybody's just like, it's great. Like you get the whole fans into it. And everything.
I do it when I'm watching. I'll be on my couch and throw my hands up.
Yeah, I'll be sitting there sometimes and like it'll come on or I'll think of it and I'll just be like in the office, middle of a workday, just throwing my hands up and like the secretary will be like, "What are you doing?" Be like, "Nothing."
Yeah.
But yeah, top 5. Yeah, 5th is Finn Balor's "Catching My Breath," and don't worry, I'll play my 5 for you goons as well, just so you get an idea of it. And here's the thing: if you're not a wrestling fan, like again, it's cool, nothing against that, but
you really should be though.
Yeah, and it's so much fun. I mean, like I said, sports and music have a way of bringing people together, and the WWE is one of those sports entities that does that so freaking well.
Yeah.
But on top of that, my 4th pick, I would have to say, is when The Rock first came out. That goes in there with me as well. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to take that. I'm going to say my 4th pick, just because I know you love to hate this guy.
Oh, my gosh.
You already know where I'm going, but it's John Cena. You can't see me like this stocky, built white dude who's rapping, but, it's just he's one of the icons of the WWE. Like, so that's 4th for me, just because, like, he does a lot of great things, too, outside of the sport, but you can't see me. That's iconic, man.
Well, and I think he's got to be probably the only wrestler to have his own album.
Yeah, it wasn't that successful outside of You Can't See Me, but he's got one.
Yeah.
On top of that, those are 5th and 4th for me. I'd have to say 3rd. 3rd is a tough one, just because it's really dark and edgy, and it's not really even music. It's more of like a chorus or like an instrumental setup, but it's The Undertaker's theme song. When he like just that whole setup, and the guy was undefeated at WrestleMania before Reigns ended him and booed this man.
Yeah.
But The Undertaker, that theme it was so good, and for the number of years when you hear it, like even if you like him or if you don't like him, you kind of get a little bit of a feared sense out of it, because that's like 6'5", 6'7", probably 260 pounds, 270 coming at you.
Yeah.
Like that is death at its finest. And the man was a great wrestler, is first ballot Hall of Famer for the WWE, but his theme song, every time I hear it, I'm just like, whew, like, all right, man, this guy's for real. Like this is death incarnate right here. Like it's pretty cool. Like not like in a weird sense, but like it just, when you hear it, he was whether he was a heel or or a face, it didn't matter. He always had that theme. And whether if you thought he was a heel or face, and for those of you that don't know what that means, it's good guy or bad guy. Heel is bad, face is good, say face. But regardless of what role he played, he always had that theme song. And when he walked out, you were just like, man, this is like really good. Number 2, stealing yours as well, kind of in a sense, but I do like Bobby Roode's "Glorious" just because, like, when you're walking out and you throw your hands up, kind of like what you do with Finn Balor, but it's really good. It's amazing. I absolutely love it. The only thing I don't like about Bobby Roode is he kind of ripped off Ric Flair when it comes to like the robes. Yeah, like, and I get that. That's totally understandable, and I would argue, that he's kind of he's like wanting to be Ric Flair so bad, and fighting against his song, I'd also say Charlotte Flair's. Charlotte Flair's walkout song is just so good. Plus, like, that's Ric Flair's daughter. She is just all her own. She is one of the best athletes the WWE has. She's probably, regardless of male or female, I think she's one of the top 5 best wrestlers before the WWE as a whole. But I'd argue her song against Bobby Roode's as well. Those two would debate for honorable mention. But I will play Charlotte, seeing as I've already played Bobby Roode on yours.
Okay.
But now the number 1 song for me, all time, nothing will ever top this, simply because it was a remake of the original classic of the 2001 Space Odyssey. And for you goons listening that are fans of wrestling, you already know where I'm going with this. I'm going with the 16-time World Heavyweight Champion, the jet-flying, kiss-dealing, wheeling-dealing, son of a gun, limousine-riding Ric Flair, the Nature Boy. Like,
Diamonds and Gators. Yeah, Diamonds and Gators.
Yeah, like that right there, when you hear that woo, and then it immediately goes into the Space Odyssey, like, everybody knows the Space Odyssey. Like, that song itself is a classic. It's one of the best instrumental songs of, like, all time, and it can be used in so many different ways. But Ric Flair, man, like, I don't think 2001 Space Odyssey when I hear the song. I think of the greatest wrestler in WWE history.
Well, and it's funny because the song definitely gives you a vibe of like something that's classic or royal or whatever, but it's funny because Elvis used the same thing before he would come out. I'm a big Elvis fan for the listeners, but he would use the same song before he'd come out to the stage and everything. So it's funny how, like, the king of rock and arguably the king of wrestling, sharing the same love for the 2001 Space Odyssey. So.
Yeah, and see, like, I'll play that song for you goons. It's, if you don't know wrestling, even if you've heard this and you don't know the sport, that's how well you can connect back to it. Is just that when you hear that one song, it kind of like goes back to the game with Triple H and being the cerebral assassin. Like, you hear that by Motorhead and you immediately think Triple H if you're a wrestling fan. And even if you don't really know the sport, that's how I feel when I hear the Space Odyssey, because it's like Ric Flair is just, he is the icon. He is the man, the myth, the legend. He is the WWE all in one. If I could hear that again one more time of him at WrestleMania walking out, right before the last time when him and Shawn Michaels took each other on, that was just,
I cry every time I watch that.
It's
match.
heartbreaking, man, because that entrance was just like you knew full well that man was gonna have to walk out of that arena
and then
tired.
For Charlotte to use like some of the same pieces of that robe the first time she went to Mania, like it's crazy to see stuff come full circle like that.
Yeah, see, and that's what makes it so good. And one song that I do like now that I didn't get a chance to mention, I'll mention it really quick, is like she just now started in the WWE. But it's a good song because it fits with her mantra and her character, but it's Ronda Rousey's Don't Give a Damn About My Reputation.
Yeah.
That song is perfect for her because those of you that know MMA, that know fighting, like I mentioned, she's one of the most influential women in sports in my previous episode. Like she was the first female fighter signed by the UFC.
Yeah, made a whole division just for her. So.
Yeah, and she like what you see in the UFC for women's fighting, it doesn't exist without her. Like I said in my previous episode, she's that influential. And her career toward the end, phased out, and now she's with the WWE full time. She's still got a lot to learn, but that song fits with her because if you know her background and what happened from her MMA career as she transitioned to the WWE, perfect. You nailed that. I mean, there's some things that still need to be fixed with her when it comes from like the performance standpoint. But if we're just looking at her solely on the walkout and her entrance, Hall of Famer. Hall of Famer right there, done. You don't have to wrestle, just Hall of Famer.
Well, maybe she'll be at the Hall of Fame ceremony tonight. Maybe they'll just throw her in there last minute.
Yeah. Oh man, that'd be just first ballot, last second call. Somebody just falls out, but speaking of Hall of Fame too, Jeff Jarrett, he had a great intro.
Oh man, and also had his own hit country music song back in the day.
Exactly. See what I mean? Like the influential, the influence of sports, of music and sports. It's insane. But going forward, as music in the sport of wrestling goes to evolve for all of you goons listening, this is how you're able to see from another man's perspective. I know 7 episodes deep now that it's just been me rambling, but to be able to have somebody come in Matthew Sharp, a.k.a. Matty Ice, who understands the game of wrestling, who's been around that, someone who's worked in the music industry as an Elvis impersonator and knows, classical music across the way and good music across the way for sure. That's how you're able to dictate and kind of showcase how well music and sports go hand in hand. And I feel like from that standpoint, going forward, you're going to see more and more of the WWE's influence on music, whether it's just ballads or quick singles that work for just the artist itself. Going forward, you don't have the WWE without music. I feel like that is such a core component now of the WWE.
I'd say you're right.
Now, as we wind down to the show, as always, fans, for you goons listening, if you haven't done so already, you can follow the Sports Hop Podcast on Twitter. The handle is sports_hop1. If you want to show me some personal love on Twitter, my handle is will_MCL11. And as always, a shout out to my man Chris Smith, guy who got this show going, really helped me run with it and get it on the ground and get it uplifted so that you goons could listen. If you want to follow Matthew personally on Twitter, what is your handle?
Matthew Sharp _P1.
So if you want to follow him, guy knows his stuff. He's always talking about The Rock, and music itself. And he's an Elvis impersonator and a damn good one at that too. So, but that's going to wrap us up here for Sports Hop again, episode 7, talking about the influence of the WWE on music and vice versa. But thanks again, goons, for listening. Till next time, peace out.